You working it? Supposed to be. Hang on, what do we do?
It's like the it's it.
You trust connected?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. Smart.
Oh, come up there. You on?
Coming along. Very good, it's on.
Yeah, there's a mile. On? Good. Good. Just to let people know that there's a couple of people came a bit late today, a man, wife and his kid, and they were just asking, it was a bit late, we wanted to try to find any place to camp around this area. They've got a little tent. Where they?
They're just sort of a little bit behind the office.
Okay, they're just for the night. So, you see some what they're doing here. They're just spending the night here. Okay.
Shall I put the microphone on, Ajahn?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Ajahn. Okay, Ajahn.
It's nice that people, when you make announcements like that, I think they're pretty okay. Because then you don't have to go and see a tent up there and wonder who the heck's in it. And wake them up in the middle of the night or call the police or anything.
When I came from Ajahn Brahm, there was a car where Christine usually parks the buggy with a couple of people in it.
Yeah, could have been them.
That the registration number was 1KPP.
Young children.
Basically, they got into John Grove Monastery.
Yeah.
They got into John Grove by following someone when the gate was open. And then they couldn't get out. Locked the gates off and then they went down towards the southwest highway. They said they were looking for damage.
So now we are out.
They're out at John Grove.
Yeah.
This was about 10 to 7.
10 to 7? You know, these people were 60 different people. We're very popular. Okay. Can you see me? Oh, what a shame. You can put those in here. Very good. Okay, we can get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammaṃ saṅghāṃ namasami. So here we go. Right action. And who knows the word, part of the word for right action? Sammakamanto. It's a verb which is associated with the noun kamma. It's doing stuff. But it's also more the physical stuff rather than the speech. So what now is right action? Refraining from deliberately killing living beings, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. Pretty easy, isn't it? But even that third term, sexual misconduct, that is one of those rules, especially for monks, we've often talked about in the monks class, that it really sort of depends often on the country in which you live. Because sometimes, what age can you get married? It changes from different countries. And so if you marry someone you're not supposed to marry, underage, then it might be legal in one country but illegal in another country. So the sexual misconduct over there also, it's not just how you're harming or hurting anybody, it's also, is it legal in the place? If it's illegal, it's always sexual misconduct. And if it is legal but it's still harming someone, again, that's also misconduct. Taking what's not given, that also includes when it's time to fill in your tax records. You have to fill them in honestly, and no sort of cheating or fiddling or something, because then you actually get things which you're not supposed to get. So everything you do as truthfully as possible. And also, when you go through customs, you declare everything which needs to be declared. Otherwise, you get into trouble. And I've always done that. That when you get things which are a little bit, this is a bit weird. For example, that time when people gave me some of the Buddha relics, and a lot of them, they're now up in the hall. And, no, this one, the dining hall. And when I went through the customs, I declared them. So you saw on the list of things to declare. Now, where do they actually fit in? And they were like human remains or something, or body parts. And it was very funny to do that because, I just said, I've got something to declare. So what is it? And the doctor said, what do you mean, bodily parts? And so have a look, there's sort of old bones. Because that's what they're supposed to be, bones after the cremation. And they're sort of the relics of the Buddha. They're all nicely packed and very ornate. And the guy who looked at me said, this is way too busy for me, too difficult for me. So brought the head guy out. And the head guy came out and he said, what is this? And he said, I declare everything. These are like relics of the Buddha, found in old stupas in Burma, which were given for our temple in Perth. He looked at me, I'm obviously honest and being straight up, not hiding anything. And he said, this is, again, too difficult, fine, that's not going to cause any problem for biosecurity, off you go. And I was like that, just example of difficult questions, situations which don't fit in. As long as you're honest, then everything works out fine. So anyway, so you always are honest and declare what's needed to be declared. So, next, refraining from deliberately, they go into more details. Refraining from deliberately killing living beings, you abstain from the destruction of life. With the rod and weapon laid aside, conscientious and kindly, you dwell compassionate to all living beings. That's even the case when there's lots of snails around. You try and take them off the path if you see them in time, so no one else will squash them. Refraining from theft, you abstain from taking what is not given. You do not steal the wealth and property of others in the village or in the forest. You may have saw the other day that some of the Thai people were taking some mushrooms. Because there's some mushrooms over in our forest here. And they always ask, first of all. So, yeah, of course you can take the mushrooms. If they need some bamboo for anything, they would know a clump of bamboo, they always ask. So they don't take what's not given. And in some of those Buddhist countries, when I first heard this, it goes really so far, and I thought this is going a bit, to extremes, but it was really kind of nice. That once a year, in the north of Thailand, they always bring a bucket of sand to the monastery. And I said, well, what are you doing that for? Well, you can use it for building, but we can get some sand. He said, no. In the whole 12 months, the past 12 months, when we've walked into the temple, we walked out again, we must have taken some sand on our shoes or on our feet. And then now we need to repay that. And I thought that was so cool. It's a nice simple thing to do. But for them it was like a tradition. So even the soil on the monastery, they would not take it because it wasn't given to them. They would always repay it with a bucket of sand. And I think that's also why we get so much toilet paper offered every day. Because they take lots of that as well. Anyway, they don't have to, but it's a nice thing to... Oops, come back in. There we go. So, refraining from sexual misconduct. You abstain from unlawful, abusive sexual activity. You do not have sexual relationship with those under the age of consent, with those who are unable to give consent, e.g. being mentally disabled, who are not free to refuse consent, such as a student to their teacher, or where such conduct would be breaking a law, or even with one already engaged. And much of that is actually in the original, but you see in the parenthesis, I just expanded that, because if one keeps the spirit of even this from the Anguttara Nikaya, you do save a lot of problems with the interaction between spiritual teachers and their disciples, between children in religious schools, and this is all about very clear not harming anybody else. And you can see the problems which it creates in our world. And that's actually right action. So, not killing living beings from theft, sexual misconduct. Yes?
I was just going to ask on sexual misconduct, where does a married person fit in here? Because that's usually given in the lists as a married person. But maybe this person is not free to...
Yeah, it's misconduct with unlawful stuff, but there's nothing there about extramarital relationships. There's nothing wrong about that, according to, in essence, but it depends on how you do that. In other words, if you have a relationship, what do they call it? A civil marriage, what is it? I don't know. Sorry? Civil partner de facto, yeah. Because I don't know anything much about this. I've been a monk for the last 48 years, 47 years. But that does not count as sexual misconduct. What counts as sexual misconduct? And it's not just sexual activity with through the genitals. It's any type of sexual misconduct when it's obviously inappropriate. Sometimes the experience I have had is that sometimes people think, oh, but she loves me. And she said, no, I don't. Oh, they all say that. Or whatever it is. Sometimes we assume way too much. And of course, there's so many laws and rules now about what is consent and what isn't consent. And you have to respect that. Of course, being monks, novices, even anagarikas, you know, we keep at least the 8th precept, and that 3rd precept is abrahmacharya. In other words, we don't have any sort of sexuality, or don't express it. And that's really important also. It's much more free and easy, nothing to worry about. Okay? So, is that okay, Ajahn Sona?
I was thinking more in terms of committed relationship. If somebody were to have an affair or something like that,
Oh, yeah.
that would come under unable to give consent in a sense.
Yeah, which is it's obviously harming somebody else.
Yeah.
And I always say in those lay talks, never think that your partner won't find out. They always do. And the obvious example is the head of the CIA, General Petraeus. He was having an affair with his biographer or something. And he thought, you know, being the head of the CIA, he knew how to keep secrets. But he couldn't keep that secret from his wife. He got busted. So if the head of the CIA can get busted, you've got no chance. So be careful. Okay, enough about that. Right livelihood. What now is right livelihood? Here the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. Doesn't say very much, does it? But it does actually say a lay follower should not engage in these 5 trades. What 5? Trading in weapons, trading in living beings. That's including like slave trading or stuff, trading in meat, trading in intoxicants, running a bottle shop, and trading in poisons. A lay follower should not engage in these 5 trades. And sometimes people ask me, they say, well, they work in a supermarket. And in the supermarket, they've got some alcohol in there. They've got meat in there. Should they stop their job? And what it really meant in those days, like things like trading in meat, would be in the butcher's shop. We'd actually kill those animals. Trading intoxicants, they wouldn't have supermarkets in those days. They'd have shops especially just for selling alcohol. And trading in poisons, that in the sense that all drugs, even like aspirin, if you take too much of it, it'll poison you. So what actually is poisons? I mean, it's not to heal you. In other words, it is trading in poisons to try and kill. But right livelihood, again, is still very, very difficult to pin down what is right livelihood and what is wrong livelihood. Because all those right and wrong livelihoods, they do change over the years. And many times people feel, if you work in a bank, it's not wrong livelihood, is it? But where is the money invested in? You work in the mines. But then, are you killing the planet? So sometimes it's really difficult trying to find what the right livelihood is. And there's very few livelihoods which are just perfectly pure. But being a monk, you can't do much wrong with being a monk or being a nun. So that's the best livelihood. You try to do the best you can. Sorry, go on.
There's also wrong livelihoods for monks, right?
Oh yeah, the wrong livelihoods for monks are like telling lottery numbers. In other words, people used to do that. It was a scam. And And what they would do, that people would come up to ask a lottery number. They had just, there's two numbers, it's the last two numbers of the government lottery in Thailand. And just the monk, they'd also have like an illegal lottery, the last two numbers. I give you like 30 to 1 or 40 to 1. And so, I'd be sitting there and somebody Nicholas would come up and say, 29. And then Ronnie would come up and say, 28. And then Bianca, someone else would come up and I'd say, 27. And he said, don't tell anybody, otherwise it won't work. And of course, a monk never pays any money. And just by laws of chance, you soon win something. And that's where you get your money from. That's wrong livelihood. From gambling. What is the other one? From oppression. Fortune telling, yeah. But of course, you know that Ajahn Chah told fortunes. You said your fortune is uncertain. Or selling like medallions. And that's one of the things which is also we will never do here. Because that's what Ajahn Chah said. The gentleman who sort of asked, he's going in the army, can I please have a little Buddha to put around his neck to protect him from bullets? To cut the story short, eventually he argued and argued and argued, and so Ajahn Chah gave in. Okay, I can give you a little Buddha to put around your neck. It's actually not that little, it's a big one in the hall. Put that around your neck, and it will protect you from bullets. The only one I have which will do that. But people do that, they don't actually give those things, they sell them to make money. And that to me is just wrong. Yeah?
I saw a story on the internet about a monk from Cambodia who found out he had an ability to heal people.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that is good or bad livelihood for a monk?
Actually, that's discussed in the Vinaya. And so, if you have any abilities like that, even like to be able to give a bodily massage to somebody, or sort of some medications and stuff, if it is to people who actually live in the monastery, then you can do that for them. You can't charge. It's not a livelihood. Don't make money out of it. You can give it for free. And if it's for people who visit the monastery, you can actually tell them what to do, you can tell them what the herbs are which may heal you, but you can't actually give it to them. You just give them the information. And if it's for people who are not visiting the monastery, or they don't live in the monastery, you can't do anything. Except if it's your family, blood relations. You can. So you try and restrict that, because sometimes people do have those understandings. Ajahn Chah was a great herbal doctor. But, he would... everyone had to be a herbal doctor in those days because there was no other medications around. So because of that, you could give to people who was in the monastery, but people who are visiting, you couldn't. You could just give advice. It was quite helpful sometimes, even in the good old days, when I was a young monk. There was no medications, much in northeast of Thailand, as doctors were a long way away, and there's no telephones anyway to call them if necessary. So I did, I was always interested in other stuff, and I learned about homeopathy. I was really good at it. So I had a lot of homeopathic medications, and there was one of the monks' mothers came to visit from, I think she was from Queensland. And she came up in the morning and said, oh, I've got a really sore back. I said, I've got the very medicine for that. And homeopathic one, it doesn't do any harm. And it actually worked. And she said, that Ajahn Brahm is really good. And she always remembered that. It just made her a day much easier to bear with no pain in the back. Just sore back. So sometimes these things actually work. But that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Otherwise people just come from the village and they queue up and they just want some healing or something. And we don't sort of heal the body here, we heal the mind, most of all. Does that answer the question, sort of? Yes?
Ajahn, many times I've looked at this section and it's always quite small.
Yeah.
For the monks, are there any sutras that say right livelihood is the Dharma and the Vinaya, or right livelihood should be the Eightfold Path?
Yes, no, in this one, the right livelihood for the monks and nuns, and the novices as well. It's not said so much for the novices. It's very much just the Vinaya. What you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. There's many examples of that. You know, one of those examples that over in Sri Lanka, the monks were not supposed to do any work at all, like physical work. So remember one monk, he was a French monk, a good friend, and his hut needed to be a bit of renovation. So he managed to get some paint and a brush and started painting the hut. The lay people heard about it, they came there and confiscated the paint and the brush. So no, you're a monk, you're not supposed to do that. And at that time I think the lay people were wrong. Because it's in the Vinaya, many stories of monks doing that physical work. You know, especially just in the monasteries. They don't go fixing up places outside of the monastery, but they've got a responsibility, you know, for looking after building, even construction, in the monastery in which they live. Of course, you know, the lay people can do that if they want and help out, but it's not wrong for the monks, you know, to clean out the sewers, to actually lay bricks, even bad bricks. Because you know, some monks are skilled at that. But they can't charge for it, they can't make money out of it. That's just not the monk's business. That makes sense? Okay. Okay, now we get some... A lot of times, as long as one remembers where the right speech and right livelihood come from the right motivations. Renunciation. So if you are building and you're painting, you're not just trying to make it look extravagant and putting like little gold filigree everywhere and changing your little light bulbs to a chandelier in your hut. So you keep it simple and practical, and that's fine, because it's coming from renunciation and from kindness and from gentleness. But you still have to look after the place. Ajahn Chah would always tell the story of a monk in one of the huts in Wat Ba Pong, and there was a storm one evening and half the roof blew off. So now half the roof was open to the elements, the other half was underneath the steel roof sheeting. And so the monk decided, oh, I've just got to keep things simple. So he just moved his bedding to just under the roof, and the other part was open to the elements. When Ajahn Chah said, well, why don't you fix the roof? He said, no, I'm living simply. And Ajahn Chah really told him off. He said, no, that's not your hut, it's a hut for the whole Sangha. So your job is to look after it and keep it in good order, so when you leave, someone else can come in there. And that's also the case for each one of you staying in this monastery, even Kusala Vihara. The room which you're staying in, you know how much work was put into that, so your job is to maintain it in a good condition. It's not your room, it's not your kuti, it's not my cave. It's there, and somebody else will make use of it later on, in many years to come. So it belongs to the Sangha. We don't own it, we make use of it and look after it for future residents. And that's a nice way of thinking, just how much building we can do. Okay? Okay, right endeavour. I put endeavour here. You know, I'm still not really satisfied with that word, but right striving, I really don't like that at all. And right effort, that even the effort is just... But anyway, and many people suggest other things you can put in there instead of endeavour, but we'll leave that for another time. I'm not satisfied with endeavour myself, but anyway. There are these 4 right endeavours. What are they? Restraint, abandonment, development, and preservation. And sometimes when we think of effort, you don't put effort to restrain things. That doesn't really fit for me. It's just like you stop things happening. It's a non-doing rather than a doing. Abandoning, if you try and abandon things by doing something, again you find out it doesn't really work. Use wisdom power rather than willpower, doing power. Development, how do you develop good qualities of mind and preserve them? And again you'll find out later on just by learning how to be peaceful. And there's all sorts of comes from that teachings of how to let go. If you see a lake of water and it's got waves in it, if you try and pat down the waves or smooth out the water, you just make more disturbance. You just protect everything. And to me that protection, restraint, points to something in this factor which right effort just usually misses out on. But anyway, let's see what these 4 are. The endeavour of restraint. And what is the endeavour of restraint? When you see an object, you see with your eyes, you do not let yourself get sucked in by any characteristics or features that generate defilements. Since if you left the faculty of sight unrestrained, unskillful states of wanting and aversion would afflict you. Instead, you practice wisdom when seeing. You guard the faculty of sight, and you undertake the restraint of sight. What do you really need to look at? So, sometimes, if you're male, and you see a beautiful woman coming in, what do? A lot of time, again, when I was a young monk, and I did, this is the old joke, you've heard this one, most of the Western monks who disrobed, it was because they were eaten by tigers. You're lucky to know those. Did you listen carefully? What did I say? Pardon? Thai girls. They're living in Thailand. And just after a while, you live at a place long enough, and it's any place, then the local, if you're a male, the local opposite gender becomes attractive. So you've got to be careful there. So anyway, so that is one of the reasons why when I was young, handsome, fit, sometimes you see some really beautiful people come into the monastery, and then to visit, people come in. So you'd always actually focus. This is my trick, and you all know this one, I think. I would focus, I'd look for the pimple on their face somewhere, or some defect somewhere. And I could always find something, some defect there, some pimple somewhere. And I saw that they weren't perfect enough. And I noticed, because this is what happens, you focus on the most beautiful part of somebody. It's beautiful hair, or beautiful nose, or beautiful breasts, or whatever you like. And that sort of builds up more lust. Or if it's something which you don't like in you, and you look at that, and that gives up the ill will. So, I don't know what people don't like these days. And I say that, you've got an aversion, say, to the Taliban. So you look at just, their scarf or something, or their Kalashnikov. Instead, look at something else on their face. Look at their eyes, or just their nose or something. Something which just takes away the perception of aversion. So we're not looking at something which feeds that negativity. If you see something which you're afraid of, like a snake, Instead of looking at the snake and looking at the fangs, look at it. It's usually the markings on their body. It's incredibly beautiful. And if you see the sort of the markings on their body, just how beautiful those markings are, you respect snakes rather than getting angry at them, or not angry, so rather averse to them. Does that make sense? Okay. You've got a question?
Yeah. So when thinking of endeavour, Ajahn, I was thinking persistence is very similar. What do you think of persistence?
Yeah. Well, I don't think very much about much these days, but I had lots of suggestions. So what you do, you put that idea in me, and then just see how it comes out next year. There's no rush for this. But again, the word, is vayama. It does actually mean in most situations like striving, effort. But then when you actually see how it's explained, it doesn't really fit. Anyway, main thing is if you left the faculty of sight unrestrained, this is just the first of the 4 right vayamas. Unskillful states of wanting and aversion would afflict you. Having heard a sound, having noticed a smell, having sensed a taste, having felt a bodily feeling, having cognized something in the mind, you do not let yourself get sucked in by any characteristics or features that generate defilements. Since you've left the mind faculty unrestrained, unskillful states of wanting and aversion would afflict you. Instead, you practice wisdom with the mind, you guard the mind, and you undertake the restraint of the mind. It's so easy to allow yourself to get sucked in by some features of the mind. Fantasies, bad thoughts, bad experiences you've had with something or somebody, and that generates defilements. You know what generates defilements. Wanting and aversion. You've been there, done that many times. You recognize that, and you're mindful enough to make sure you're restrained. As somebody pointed out, I haven't said it for a long time now, that when someone like an Ajahn Chah would teach about mindfulness, he would never just say mindfulness. He'd always say satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom, which is exactly the same as sati sampanchanya. They don't have mindfulness by itself. It's also always with wisdom, with understanding. In other words, you're mindful, but you know what is dangerous. You know what is fitting for you to be mindful of and what is dangerous. So sometimes, you may be just eating too much. I was mindful all the time. Every baked bean which I put in my mouth, I was mindful of. But I wasn't mindful of how much I was putting in my mouth and what the dangers are. So this is where the mindfulness always has to be with wisdom. Otherwise it doesn't work. So this is the restraining. Always has to be, what is going to create wanting and aversion in your mind. Do you want to do that? And of course, after a while, the wisdom is established. You don't want to do that. So you undertake the restraint of the 6 senses. That's the endeavour to restrain, so these things don't come in the first place. What is the endeavour to abandon? So a bad state of mind is already in your head. Actually, the mind's not in your head, but you know what I mean. Here you do not maintain an arisen motivation of wanting. You abandon it, you let it go, renounce it, bring it to cessation. You do not indulge in the arisen motivation of aversion, an arisen motivation of harming. Whenever bad motivations arise, you abandon them, let them go, renounce them, and bring them to cessation. That's, the samasankappas, and the wrong sankappas, the motivations, not the thoughts, but where they're coming from. You want something, you notice that, and whatever you need to do to abandon it. This is called the endeavour to abandon. When you are mindful of some objects and there arises in you an afflicting unwholesome motivations connected with desire, aversion and delusion, Then, you know this one, where this is from? I think you should remember this one. Is this how to overcome distracting thoughts? Sutta, Vitakasantana Sutta, I think. You should give attention to some other object that generates wholesome mind states. That's why I was saying, if I see something beautiful in something, I look at its unattractiveness. It balances it. Something which is fearful, look at something for compassion. And so that balances things. Thus, unwholesome states are abandoned and subside. With their disappearance, your mind becomes internally steady, settled, unified, and still. Or you should examine the danger in those unwholesome motives. Very often people think they're always in charge. Oh, just a little bit of wanting, and just a little fantasy, that's all it is. Just a little bit of extra food, it doesn't really matter. But you see the danger in these things, so you don't overdo it. You should try to ignore the unwholesome motives and not give attention to them. That's another thing. Whatever you give attention to, it actually grows. Whatever you water grows in the garden. So you've got a chance of watering the weeds or watering the flowers. You should give attention to stilling the causes of those motives. That's one of my favourite ones. What causes these bad intentions? Like ill will or wanting, or desire, lust, what causes them to arise? Sometimes it's just we want to disturb ourselves. That's one of the reasons during a rains retreat, there's always some people want to have some drama. They get bored, nothing much to do. Honestly, I don't know any other reason why they cause a little bit of problems. Well, I can leave that till after the rains retreat. We can discuss it then. So, stilling the causes, because a lot of times that people are afraid and challenged of peace and stillness. When your meditation starts to take off, you think most people would love to carry on and get really deep in meditation and bliss out and get enlightened. Why don't they? There's a lot of psychology, as I've mentioned before, that sometimes people think they don't deserve it. What are you talking about? Or they think, no, I'll just get enlightened next week. I've got plans. But whatever it is, sometimes we do have the causes for wanting. Why does wanting come up in the first place? Why does ill will come up? It's crazy. Ill will is really crazy. Doesn't achieve anything. All the times you've had ill will in the past, anger, aversion, what's it ever done? That's one of the reasons why I coined that phrase. If someone's hurt you, no need to seek for revenge, because karma will... I never said it. No, it's Australian, local language. But it's also, people remember it then, it's really true. So you just don't need to get angry at people. Don't need to seek revenge. So anyway, it's still the cause of the motives which give rise to ill will and also for wanting. Why do you want anything? And sometimes we're addicted to wanting. And we're afraid of peace and stillness. Or you should clench your teeth with your tongue, pressed against the roof of your mouth, and beat down, constrain, and crush any such afflicting, unwholesome motives. With the disappearance of them, your mind becomes internally steady, settled, unified, and still. I put that down there because that's what the Buddha said, but I've never found that really helpful. Last resort, if you really want, you're about to break a precept or something, then clench your teeth. Tongue pressed against the roof of your mouth, and beat down, constrain, crush.
That's what you've done with a glass of water, Ajahn.
Yeah. So in the end, that is again the last possibility, and I think that's only just to stop yourself doing something really stupid. Okay, anyway, that's the endeavour to abandon. And you can see that the abandon is mostly done by wisdom power. Only the last one mentions any type of willpower. And the wisdom power is always, to me anyway, was far more effective. Mindfulness or wisdom. Yeah. The endeavour to develop. Now this is restraint or abandoning stuff. But then, to develop, it's the old simile of if somebody wants to rob your house. What's one of the best ways of making sure that bad things, bad defilements, or any defilements don't get into your mind? Having good defilements in your mind. Because you've got good people in your house, of course, then bad people just won't come in. So what is the endeavour to develop? Here you develop the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, the enlightenment factor of exploring the Dhamma, of energy, rapture, tranquility, stillness, equanimity. And every one of these based upon seclusion, physical and mental, fading away in cessation, maturing in release. This is called the endeavour to develop. These are the bojjhangas. And that's just translated very roughly. But one of the things there, it's not thinking about the Dhamma, number two, it's actually exploring it. Because if you think, your thinking is always very, very limited and restrained. You've seen me do this many times before. What's this I'm holding up in my hand? Just giving it a name is not enough. After a while, when you stop thinking about it, you're silent. Then you can actually see amazing things, what you have here. Much deeper. That's exploring the Dhamma. And when you do this, you do get energy up. How do you get energy? By having a Red Bull? Some monks of the time I've seen them do that. It's crazy stuff. You get more energy when you practice the Dhamma, when you are restrained. You don't think too much because you're not wearing out, you're not using up the energy of the mind. The mind has its natural energy. We waste so much of it by complaining, thinking. So anyway, so energy comes up, and when you're energetic, you've got rapture. And you're easy to be tranquil, that's passaddhi. Tranquility of the body, tranquility of the mind. And that brings our eyes to stillness. That's samadhi, to jhanas. And enlightenment factor of equanimity. Well, these days I prefer contentment. And they're all based on seclusion, physical and mental. Things fading away and ceasing. Maturing in release. And lastly, the endeavour to maintain. So you've got good states of the mind. Your meditation is nice and peaceful. Why can't it stay there? Because you disturb it. And what is the endeavour to maintain? Here you keep in mind an arisen mental meditation object that generates stillness, such as recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, or the Sangha, or a skeleton, or loving kindness, or the breath, or a nimitta. This is called the endeavour to maintain. You keep in the mind an arisen meditation object that generates stillness. What generates stillness? Anything to do with wanting. Just makes the mind move. And recollecting the Buddha, I think you all remember that guided meditation on imagining that you're the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, enlightened. Nothing to do, nothing missing. You don't have to perfect anything. You've perfected everything. And that just recollection of you being a Buddha, sitting under the Bodhi tree. Nothing left to do. That recollection of the Buddha, that really stills me when I do that. The Dhamma is like the cause of things. When you recollect the cause of, do you really want to get reborn again? So you know what the cause of rebirth is, the independent origination, wanting. What do you want anything for? The meditation object that generates stillness. I'm going to go on my retreat soon. I know that wanting anything, wanting jhanas, wanting to get psychic powers so I can just travel overseas without needing to go in an aircraft, so I can help so many people. That just causes so much. You're not stupid enough to do that. You get no stillness at all there. So you let things be. Relax to the max. When I mean the max, I mean really the max. And all the Sangha I've known, monks and nuns, who have developed their minds so peacefully. I've seen many of them. How do they do that? And just see them. Just remember that monk, Ajahn Tate, just comes to my mind. Even though the king of Thailand just built him this beautiful place where he could stay, when I went to visit him, there was just this really small old monk sitting in a chair, just looking through the window at the Mekong River. He was there, but he wasn't part of the place. His was simplicity and kindness. And that's one of the reasons, so still and so kind, all my questions just vanished. Didn't have a question left. And that generated such stillness in my mind. So sometimes if I want to generate some stillness, I just think of that experience and it's just so strong. Can you imagine it now? Or a skeleton. These are a super. Just to think of it like a skeleton or a skull or something. What do you just... You've already got one skull, why do you want to go and marry another skull for? Or do you want to get another skull in your next life? And have the patter of tiny bones on the floor? Little kids, do you want that? So after a while, this is all we are. All stuff is. So after a while we just become very peaceful. Interesting with skeletons, those who develop the perception of like a skeleton or a skull, you know, just in your meditation, that usually turns into these beautiful nimittas. I don't know how many times people have done that. Skeletons are supposed to make you turn away. It's just a body. No one can ever call a skeleton beautiful or a skull beautiful. You give it a try, see what happens. After a while, you focus on that skull, you can just visualize it. And it just starts to fluoresce, becomes so beautiful, and it turns into nimitta. It's just what it does. It happens so many times to monks and nuns. Or loving kindness. That's real loving kindness should generate stillness. In other words, may all beings, including yourself, it's another way to say, open the door of your heart. Without wanting anything. Without wanting. In other words, your door is open, indiscriminate, like the sun. So it means it doesn't sort of reject anything, doesn't want anything. That causes stillness. It's not wanting, may that sickness disappear. May you get cured. No, it's just may you be peaceful. Even not may you be peaceful. If you want to be peaceful, that's fine. If you don't want to be, that's your call. But open the door of your heart to whatever happens. What creates stillness? Or the breath or a nimitta. You heard me say a month about that in the past. This is called the endeavour to maintain. And all of these things, you just keep them in the mind. How do you keep them in the mind? Because you see the joy in them, the purpose in them. You try and hold a nimitta in your mind. You can't. The holding, the effort, disturbs it. You try and develop with force mindfulness or exploring the Dhamma, and you just get tired after a while. You allow these, the causes of them, you develop the causes, not the thing itself. And how you abandon stuff which comes in your mind. You all know that story of the anger-eating monster. Instead of trying to abandon that monster, it's welcome monster. As Ajahn Chah would say, it's not the monster disturbs you, you disturb the monster. He said it about sound, but you think you know what I mean. And to restrain. How do you make sure these bad states of mind don't come in anyway? One of the other ways of doing this is hanging out with good people, the Kalyana Mitta. And when the Buddha told Ananda told the Buddha, oh yeah, having good friends, Kalyana Mitta, is 50% of the holy life. The Buddha said, no, 100%. In other words, it's not your thoughts or your wisdom, it's just hanging out with good people. Where do you find good people? Do you find good people on the internet? Do you find people on the news channels, good people? Or do you find good people just by coming to the talks, lunch? Amazing the people we have here. Incredible good. Okay. Any questions on this so far? Yes, Nicholas?
Could all those develop, could it be called right cultivation?
It could be called lots of things. Cultivation, restraint, whatever, yeah. Because you can actually see where it fits in. It's just a word. The title for it is that I haven't found a perfect one yet. Probably never will. But you can see what it's doing. In the context of the Eightfold Path, you've got the right view, and then you've got the right motivation from thoughts of renunciation, kindness and gentleness. And that makes your sila, your right speech, action and livelihood, harmless. And that means it becomes easier for you to restrain, abandon, develop and keep in mind not wanting and aversion, but the opposites. The opposite of wanting is renunciation, letting go. The opposite of aversion is kindness and gentleness. You're actually developing sort of what the right motivation is leading towards. And when you've abandoned wanting and aversion, what are those two? It's the first two factors of the Eightfold Path. Satipatthana. Where we got here. The next factor, right mindfulness. What now is right mindfulness? What now is right mindfulness? The four focuses of mindfulness, lead in one direction only, to the purification of beings, to going beyond sadness and crying, to the disappearance of physical and mental suffering, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana. What are the four? 1. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, you abide aware of the body, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing, and mindful. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, you abide aware of experience, Vedana, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing, and mindful. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, you abide aware of the mind, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing, and mindful. Having restrained the 5 hindrances, you abide aware of the mind objects, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing, and mindful. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of repetition in there because you see it all starts with having restrained the 5 hindrances, otherwise known as having restrained mindfulness and aversion. Where did you do that? In the previous factor, number 6, samavayama. That's the purpose of what samavayama is to restrain those hindrances, to make them weak, so they're not disturbing your mindfulness. So that's why we have the right effort there, or vayama, whatever you call it, restraint. Cultivation might be a good way, but what are you cultivating? You're cultivating the freedom from the 5 hindrances. And that's, I think I said this in the Wednesday night talk. Why is it 7 days you can't become enlightened after doing really rigorous satipatthana practice? Because you haven't restrained the 5 hindrances. So anyway, that's important for all of the mindfulness practices. You can't do this mindfulness just by itself. It's part of the path. You can't do jhanas by itself. It's part of the path. So they all sort of link together here. So anyway, mindfulness of the body. And how are you aware of the body? Mindfulness of breathing. First of all, there's lots of examples of mindfulness of the body. Starts off with mindfulness of breathing. You go to a quiet, secluded place. Is Bodhinyana Monastery quiet and secluded? Is Jhana Grove quiet and secluded? Now I remember just going on pilgrimage to India, and it was really sort of busy. And then I got to Bangkok. Oh, Bangkok was so quiet. And then you're crazy, Ajahn Brahm. It's not quiet, it's really busy. And so from Bangkok we came to Perth. And those people who've been overseas landed in Perth Airport, if you remember it. It was just so peaceful and the air was so good. So in Perth, it's really noisy in the airport. And then we got on the bus or the cars and came to Bodhinyana Monastery. Oh, it's so peaceful and quiet here, with all the lay people around, building stuff. But it's much more peaceful than Perth Airport. And then from here, then you went to your hut. Oh, my hut was so much more peaceful than just being in the central area here. But then I went into my cave because my hut was still very noisy compared to my cave. I went in the cave. Oh, and that's really peaceful. But not really. Then you went into deep meditation. And that's getting somewhere. That's peaceful. So quiet and secluded places. Sometimes it's relative. But the most quiet and secluded place is in your mind. You let the whole 5 senses vanish. Now you're talking. But anyway, you go to a quiet, secluded place, what best you can get. Sit down comfortably and give priority to establishing mindfulness. And you see here already there's some translations which you may not be used to. Quiet, secluded place, that's common. Sit down comfortably. They say sometimes sit down in the position, they call it palanka. Sit down cross-legged with your back straight. That will work if you're young and fit, but I don't know about you, but I certainly, many years ago I injured my back. There's no way I could straighten my back for about 6 months. Eventually got there, because I'd injured one of the vertebrae or something. And people said, Ajahn Brahm, stop overcompensating, you're walking like an old man. I can't! But anyway, sort of it passes in the end. And that was a great experience, for me anyway, to notice that sometimes you can't do that. So that's why we have even chairs, not even cross-legged, where you can lean against the wall or something, or meditate sort of on a bed or something. So instead of actually saying you have to be full, if you really want to get enlightened, full lotus, and don't move for hours. Of course, some of you tried that, I tried that. I remember this one monk. He decided to meditate all night without moving. Sat there and he did it, meditated all night without moving. And he had to have a double knee reconstruction afterwards. You don't mind me telling you that, because, it was just, he thought that just through willpower he could get into some deep states of meditation. He just wrecked his body. So there's been too many cases like that. Don't do that. Sit down comfortably and give priority to establishing mindfulness. You don't watch the breath of the tip of your nose. It never says that. And then just make this the most important thing, to be mindful first of all. Which is one of the reasons why you've got to bring your attention to the present moment, be with your body, relax a bit. And then the breath comes to you. Then mindful, you breathe in, mindful, you breathe out. When the in-breath and out-breath are long, you're aware that they're long. In-breath and out-breath are short, you're aware that they're short. Then you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out. Then you learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out. Just as a skilled painter is aware whether they're making a long brush stroke or a short brush stroke, so too when the in-breath is long, you're aware that it's long. You don't make it long, you're just aware. But how many of you, when you did your breath meditation, thought, my breath isn't long, it's not short, it's in the middle? And it never says that in the sutras. I must be doing it wrong. The whole point is that you know enough about the breath. It just makes it more interesting to know whether it's long or short, or in the middle, or how long or how short, extremely long, or just average long, or just a little bit from medium to average long. To make it interesting. What is really interesting is actually amplifying on that is, what about the space between the in-breath and the out-breath? And the space between the out-breath and the in-breath. When I teach 9-day retreats, I always mention that, because people get a bit bored, they've never heard that before. So they get really interested. When you give some extra information they haven't heard before, everybody really pays attention. When it's stuff they've heard so many times they're sick of it, of course they just zone out. So I said, find out which is the longest. The space between the in-breath and the out-breath, or the space between the out-breath and the in-breath. It gives you something to do. It's a total waste of time. Who cares which is the longest, the shortest? What's important is you're paying more attention. That's all. Or the other trick which I do is to teach the backwards breath meditation. And it all comes into the same thing here, just amplifying it, making the breath a little bit more interesting. So how do you do the backwards breath meditation? You breathe out first, then you breathe in. Breathe out. And you try it, it's actually different. Different perception, it's weird, but it's true. Backwards breath, it makes it a bit more fun and interesting to do. So you get into the breath meditation, but a lot of the time it's after you've been meditating for a while, you don't need to do that. You're just aware of the breath. And then you experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out. And honestly, I just can't understand why some teachers, even monk friends I've known, they keep saying that, no, you watch the whole body at this time. And it just says the whole, sabba, kaya patisangvedi. You mean the whole body? That means you have to be aware of each toe and the soles of your feet all at the same time, and the knees and the tummy and the digestive tract. It makes absolutely no sense. And even the Buddha said, no, it's the breath. The breath is counted as part of this big thing called kaya, body. Anyway, if you do it naturally, you find that after a while you just become aware of the whole breath, from beginning to the end of the breath. It's quite obvious, natural. It's not just watching the breath go in, go out, long, short. See, from the very beginning of a breath, when it first starts to arise, every moment of the breath, until it stops. And the space between the breaths, the beginning of the out-breath as it goes out. Naturally, you don't force it. It's like the whole, without missing one part of the breath. And of course, that's mindfulness. It happens naturally as you get more focused on the breath, see the whole thing. You don't go and figure out what's happening in your body. Body's supposed to disappear, you just notice the breath. And then you learn to calm the breath. How do you calm the breath? Does it by itself? Because you're not doing anything, not thinking. You're not trying to, what's the next stage? You're just being aware of the breath, you get so calm, your brain is hardly moving, which means you do get calm naturally. The breath gets very peaceful because the engine, your brain, is not needing much metabolism. Your breath slows down. It's very peaceful, very calm. In this way, you're aware of your own body, or you're aware that the bodies of others are the same nature as yours, or you abide aware of the nature of both your own and others' bodies. It's just the body, that's all. You're just doing the breath to start off with. Or else you abide aware of what causes the arising of the body. When they say the upada, the arising, this is explained by the Buddha in the Satipatthana Samyutta. What do we mean by the arising and the passing away of a body in Satipatthana practice? It doesn't mean things coming into existence and passing away again. It means why, the causes. So what are the causes of the arising of the body? They're the four nutriments. Four nutriments, I got them, well, four nutriments, they're down here, so you can actually see where they are. The arising and passing away. Is this what you have on here, arising and passing away on there? Good, okay. This is a Buddha teaching. I will teach you the origination, samudaya, and the passing away, atagamana, of the four focuses of mindfulness, from the Samyutta. Supported by the four nutriments, there is the origination and continuance of the body. With the cessation of the four nutriments, the body ceases. Four nutriments are food, phassa, the six sense contacts, will, and consciousnesses. When one of those four nutriments fades away, stops, so does the body. So in other words, not just watching things rise and pass away, it's why they rise and why they pass away. Changes the whole thing about the four satipatthanas. This is where actually you do see that they're caused. They're subject to cessation. They can't be something permanent. Supported by the six sense contacts, phassa, there's the origination of experience. With the cessation of the six sense contacts, experience ceases. So experience is never permanent, can't be. Now, the citta, the third satipatthana, supported by nama-rupa, the objects of consciousness, there is the origination of the citta. It's not original, it arises. With the cessation of nama-rupa, the citta ceases. That's what it means to do the satipatthana, the third satipatthana, of being aware of citta. And supported by attention, there is the origination of the mind. Cessation of attention, mind objects cease. They're not permanent, everlasting. Out there somewhere, if you pay attention to them. When you don't pay attention to them, they don't exist.
Is that what Ñāṇatiloka Mahāthera is about, Ajahn?
Yeah.
I just know attention is linked to that.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's paying the right attention. Not to see things rise and pass away. Why they rise? Why they pass away? Then you know they're not permanent. Okay, well, we've got boop boop. Breathing. Okay. In this way, you're aware of your own body. Are you aware of what causes the arising of the body, the four nutriments, or you abide aware that the body will cease when the four nutriments cease? Or you abide contemplating the body's causal nature of both arising and ceasing? Or else, mindfulness, it is just a body. Impermanent suffering are not me, not mine, not a permanent essence. It is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, for sati and sampanchanya, essential for liberation, and you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. this is one way that you are mindful of the body. Or the 4 postures, when walking, you are aware in the present that I am walking. It's always present tense. I put in the present there, that's implied very strongly. You abide, I am walking. Not where you're going to, where you're coming from. Happened to me many times. Busy in Nolamara, and I was carrying some papers into the office, and somebody said, Ajahn Brahm, how are you? And stupidly I said, I'm getting there. Have you ever said that? I'm getting there. And the person who interrupted me said, Ajahn Brahm, exactly where are you getting? And I understood. I said, to the cemetery. That's what that will lead to. So these days when you ask me, how are you? I never say I'm getting there, I'm being here. It's a much better answer. So how are you? Ajahn Sanghavatana? I'm being here. It's a much better answer than I'm getting there. Anyway. Yeah. So I am walking. When standing, I'm standing. When sitting, I'm sitting. When lying down, I'm lying down. You're aware in the present, I am lying down. Thus you maintain present moment awareness of however your body is disposed. In this way you're aware of your own body, you're aware that other bodies, or the bodies of others are the same nature as yours, so you abide aware of both your own and others' bodies. Otherwise you think other people get sick, but not me. It's amazing how people think they're different. Or else you abide aware of what causes the arising of the body, the 4 nutriments. You abide aware the body will cease when the 4 nutriments cease. Or you abide contemplating the body's causal nature, both arising and ceasing. Or mindfulness is just a body. Impermanent suffering, not me, not mine, not a permanent essence, is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential for liberation. That's the purpose of this. And you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. There's another way you are mindful of the body, or full comprehension of the purpose. It's called Sampanchanya. You act in full comprehension of the purpose when going forward and returning. Why are you going? It's not just to get somewhere. It's to learn how to be here. And returning, you act in full comprehension of the purpose when looking ahead and looking away. When flexing and extending your limbs, when wearing your clothes and carrying things. Sometimes people say, Ajahn Brahm, why is your robe always falling off? Can't you learn how to just wear it more easily? And I say, no, this is compassion. I know why I'm wearing my robes. And when mine fall off, it means the younger monks who come here, they don't feel so inferior. It's kindness. And, where's it gone? Carrying things, you act in full comprehension of the purpose regarding eating, drinking, defecating, and urinating. Walking, do you know why you defecate? What's the purpose of that when you sit on the can? Don't rush it. Don't force it. It's always learning. Let go. And how do you let go? By relaxing to the max. You try and rush it, meditation, or on the toilet, same thing. You won't get very far except sick. Is that true? Okay. When walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, being awake, talking and keeping silent. Hey, hang on. You're mindful of the purpose when you are sleeping? Are you mindful when you're sleeping? No, of course, when you're sleeping, you're sleeping. But that's actually what it says. Mindful when you're sleeping. That causes a lot of problems for monks. They think, oh, I better be aware when I'm asleep. Because that's what it says. And some people try and fix up that problem by saying, no, I'm mindful when falling asleep. oh, I'm mindful and I'm awaking. It doesn't mean that. The party is different. What it really means is mindful of the purpose. Why are you sleeping? When you go to bed at night, why? And the purpose is well explained when Mara was following the Buddha around for a long time after his enlightenment, trying to catch the Buddha out to prove he wasn't enlightened. And so, after a good meal, during the hot season, the Buddha lay down and fell asleep. And Mara woke him up, caught you out. You can't be enlightened. You're having a rest during the day. You know, who do you think you are? Just enlightened people don't have a sleep during the day. There's other people who are just working hard right now, getting the food for you for tomorrow morning. So when you think you're a compassionate, kind one, why did you have a rest in the middle of the day? And the Buddha's answer was, for the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. When I heard that, first of all, oh, that's a good line. Every time someone catches me out oversleeping, I'll say the same. But then over the years, the Buddha doesn't sort of tell jokes like that. He doesn't bend the truth. No reason to do that. That's actually why you do sleep. For the happiness and benefit of all beings. That's why he did it. To make sure the body was healthy. And to this day, I always reflect that, before you go to sleep, night time or middle of the day or any old time, ask my body, do you want to go to sleep? Why? And often there's reasons which you know are true. So you let the body have a rest for the happiness and well-being of yourself and all other beings. Then you can live a long life without too much stress and sickness, and be able to teach, as the Buddha did. That's the purpose of sleeping, for the happiness and benefit of all beings. It's not a joke, it's actually powerfully deep. That's why you stand, that's why you walk, that's why you wake, that's why you're talking, why you keep silent. The happiness and well-being of all beings. In this way you're aware of your own body, you're aware that other bodies are the same nature as yours, you abide aware of both your own and other people's bodies, you abide aware what causes the arising of the body, the four nutriments, you abide aware the body will cease when the four nutriments cease, you abide contemplating the body's causal nature, both arising and ceasing, or else mindfulness is just a body. Impermanent suffering are not me, not mine, not a permanent essence, is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, is essential for liberation. And you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is another way that you are mindful of the body, or the bodily parts, the 32 parts of the body. You heard that one before? People have heard me say this too many times. So, can you count how many parts of the body are mentioned here? Only 31. 32 parts of the body came from commentaries and Abhidhamma. The Buddha only says 31 parts. What was the extra part, which wasn't obviously so important for the Buddha? The brain, yeah. Last time I thought it'd be great writing a PhD thesis on that. Why did the Buddha not sort of give such importance to the brain? He gave importance to the other things, like skin, blood, bones, tissues, organs. And I never actually said all the parts here because it becomes like just an old anatomy lesson. So review your body from head to toe, bounded by skin. It's made up of many kinds of parts, blood and bones, tissues and organs, just as there were a full shopping bag with many kinds of groceries, such as bread, potatoes, fruit and vegetables. They say the different types of rice. Well, I don't know the different types of rice. This is Australia. Maybe you should change it now. There are different types of pasta, potatoes, fruit and veggies. So too you review this same body as full of many parts thus. In this body there are hairs, bones, shit and urine. That is another way you are mindful of the body. Did no one object to me saying shit? Because this is again said by the Buddha, you should teach in the local language. That's how people say it. Anyway, have you had enough yet, or should I finish off? It's because it's getting late, it's 8:30 already. How are you? Okay, you know the one to blame there, Metachi, if you get to time.
I'll leave now.
Elements, so you view your body by way of elements such. In this body there are the earth element, water element, fire element, and the air element. That's another way that you're mindful of the body. 9 charnel ground contemplations. You see a corpse thrown aside in the charnel ground up to 3 days old, bloated, livid and oozing matter. Then you reflect that your own body is of the same nature. It may become like that, it's not exempt from that fate. I'll go through this quickly because for many people they can't relate to that anymore. You don't see that these days. When I was a young monk, you could see that, go to autopsies and did the cremations in the monastery. So you saw that every day. Or you see a corpse thrown aside in the charnel ground being devoured by birds, animals or maggots. Then you reflect that your own body is of the same nature. It may become like that. It's not exempt from that fate. Or you see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, a skeleton with flesh and blood held together with sinews, a fleshless skeleton smeared with blood held together with sinews, a skeleton without flesh and blood held together with sinews, disconnected bones scattered in all directions, bones bleached white, the colour of shells, bones heaped up, or bones more than a year old, rotted and crumbled to dust. And sometimes when you teach this, say in Noramara, sometimes people think that monks are weird. Because they don't understand that. But I put that down there, and you can understand, you can see a deceased body, maybe of a kangaroo in this monastery. You can just see how it all decays. Like that, so you. Then you reflect that your own body is of the same nature. It may become like that, it's not exempt from that fate. In that way you're aware of your own body, or you're aware that the bodies of others are of the same nature as yours, or you abide aware of both your own and other people's bodies. Or else you abide aware what causes the arising of the body. For nutriments, you understand that the body is the nature to cease when the 4 nutriments cease. Or you abide contemplating the body's causal nature of both arising and ceasing, or else mindfulness is just a body, impermanent suffering, and not me, not mine, not a permanent essence, is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential for liberation. And you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. This is another way you are mindful of the body. Okay, we'll do the benefits of mindfulness of the body next time. But even doing the mindfulness of the body, it says that, you know the rest of it. Read it for yourself. Questions? Yes, Biji.
Going back a bit, but you did mention, I can't remember exactly what, but it was about drama. You know how you get addicted to drama.
Oh, yeah.
It's very sticky, and
Yeah.
there's an energy to it. And in my own mind, it's just interesting to me to try and untangle a bit. When the mind decides that it's just going to replay so-and-so did so-and-so.
Yeah.
You always tell a story till you come out on top, and just any thoughts you have about why it's so sticky. Like rationally we know this is bringing me suffering. To go over and over someone did something and there's some anger or irritation or hurt or betrayal, blah, 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 but I just wonder why it's so sticky at times.
Yeah, to unstick it, one of the things I always remember is, again, you gave the answer there, you said, but you always come out on top. Why is it you're always a victor? And the reality is that sometimes you've lost a lot when those things happen. So sometimes, just imagine when you have those dramas, you not coming out on top, you losing. Imagine that the people, your adversaries, why do they do that? And sometimes if you just give them the benefit of the doubt, never be the prosecuting attorney when you reflect on the people's actions which cause so much difficulty and drama in your life. Don't be the prosecutor, be the defense attorney. Just figure out some possible reasons why they did those things. And when you're the defense attorney, you can find so many reasons to forgive. And when you forgive someone else, then all that drama tends to disappear. They're just doing what they thought was right. You know, it may have hurt me, but I learned so much from that. They may have caused difficulties for others, but this is life, we can cope with it. But don't condemn them, whatever they are, whoever they are.
That's nice, to look at it differently rather than just blaming, judging, and your own hurt or shame, but to really tilt it to more
Be the defence and
more generous
yeah.
generous way of looking at it.
And after a while, they always come up with an open verdict. So no. So you let it go, and then it disappears. Yes?
Is that the same attitude as dealing with the anger-eating demon, or has it got a different subtlety based to it? So, to take that lady's point, if there was the drama, do you put the drama into the anger-eating demon and try and send that meta?
Yeah, well, it's also you find out that the kindness is a different angle, but the same sort of thing. It's a drama, and you know that to give the ill will, get out of here, it gets worse. And that's why the caring is much better than curing, because more people get cured when you care for them, rather than put curing first at all costs. So, but it's also that people do love drama. That's I read this in an article years ago. There was, like in UK, I think one of the longest running soap operas was a thing called Coronation Street. And I think in there that somebody was accused of murder, which they never did. And of course everyone seeing that saw that, but in the episode, it's just a play, that's all, it's just a drama. And they got accused of murder and put in jail. And of course all the viewers knew they hadn't done it. And it was such a big thing that there was a motion or a discussion in the British Houses of Parliament. They had to talk about it. Because if they have enough people want to hear something, then the politicians have to speak about it. Well, this is actually madness. You know, there's real wars going on, people dying, economies are failing. You're talking about Coronation Street on the TV, and they were. That's why the drama is sometimes more important than real life. It's exciting. For some people, it's just more, you get more involved. That's why I sometimes say, what happened? What really happened? It's none of your business. Yeah, I know, but please. So anyway. Well, at the time, one of those times I went on retreat a few years ago, when I came off retreat, even people in the monastery were sad, and all the visitors were really sad. I said, what are you sad for? Oh, Princess Diana died. I remember that, because I was on retreat while that happened. Didn't know anything about that. And I was really quite in my face as soon as I came out of retreat. I said, was she in the monastery when she died? No, it's just somehow other people really got into that drama. People die all the time. Come on. Where's Princess Diana? Oh, well, was she one of our supporters? So after a while, you can see just how people love to make something out of something. No, sorry, make something out of nothing. There's a little bit of something, but way over exaggerated. Okay, I think it's time to go. Had enough? Okay, who's going to do the Handamayang? Sadhu, 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 anumodami. Okay, very good. We'll do the Arahang in a moment. Oh yeah, you're going to take this off. One of these days I'm going to forget that's on here, jump off the chair and strangle myself. And that'll be the end of me.
Ahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Very good.